Good morning, it's October 1st, and this is To My Liberal Friends. Well, the liberals, and by that I mean Democrats, in this country love to portray Donald Trump as the villain and constantly say he's a threat to democracy. Now, I have several issues with Trump, but he's not a threat to democracy. He lost the 2020 election and should have accepted it graciously. He would be doing much better in the polls today if he had done that, and I think there would be two more Republicans from Georgia in the Senate, and none of Biden's wild spending bills would have survived. The one thing I think Trump is correct on is that Democrats have used the judiciary as a weapon against him. He was taken to court in 4 different cases. The one case where I thought he might have been the most vulnerable was the classified document case and his keeping them at his home in Florida. But that seems to be disappearing despite the best efforts of Jack Smith. What concerned me the most was several of these prosecutors campaigned for the job and, if elected, promised to go after Donald Trump and prosecute him. I think to campaign in such a way is unseemly and denigrates the judicial offices they were seeking. This was the case in Atlanta, and certainly it was the case on the 2 prosecutors, Alvin Bragg of New York City and Letitia James, the New York Attorney General. Over and over they said, if we're elected, I'm going after Donald Trump. The case that Ms. James brought against Trump involved his loan application to a German bank. According to Ms. James, Trump had inflated the value of his assets to get a favorable interest rate. The trial judge, Arthur Engoron, seemed to agree and basically declared Trump guilty before the trial began. Now, this forced Trump and his lawyers to appeal this outrageous verdict to the New York Appellate Court. Remember, they ended up saying Trump owed $489 million in penalties and interest. They based this number by claiming his fraudulent loan application allowed him to make a significant amount of money, and therefore he should be stripped of these gains plus a penalty. Well, last week, the appellate court heard this appeal, and it did not look good for Ms. James. A 5-judge appellate panel on Thursday heard Mr. Trump's appeal on a lower court judge's penalty for allegedly inflating the value of his real estate assets to obtain better loan terms. Ms. James' lawsuit was unusual since nobody claimed to be harmed by the former president's alleged changes on his legerdemain, which is ordinarily required in fraud cases. You should also remember that it seems no other developer had their loan application looked at. In this case, the bank actually lowered the value of Trump's assets and was satisfied enough to make the loan, and the loan was repaid. Everybody was happy, except Ms. James, who had to find something to charge Trump to fulfill her campaign promises. Now, several appellate judges noted as much. I'm going to quote, "I'm sorry, what's being described sounds an awful lot like a potential commercial dispute between private actors," and that was according to Justice John Higgins. It seems, he mused, that the AG is, quote, going into an area that wasn't intended for her jurisdiction. He suggested that the court may need to impose, quote, guardrails on the AG's power. Justice David Friedman concurred, quote, "You got 2 really sophisticated parties in which no one lost any money," end quote. Prior cases brought under state civil fraud laws involve corporate actions with large numbers of putative victims, such as banks bilking customers. And Friedman said, "You don't have anything like that here." Quote, "There has to be some limitation on what the Attorney General can do in interfering in these private transactions where people don't claim harm." And that was by Justice Peter Moulton. He added that, quote, "The immense penalty in this case is troubling, given that parties left these transactions happy about how things went down," end quote. Those were the judges. Hearing this case meant the 5-judge panel could look at the law absent all the theatrics that were played out for the jury in the trial. There would be no emotions or political leanings affecting the decision because they have a full understanding of the law, and they know if they fail to correct these injustices, it will be appealed to the next higher court. And they understand that precedents like this are crucial for the rule of law and for future cases of this nature. Judge Engoron was not sophisticated enough to understand how bad this case was and how egregious the amount of money awarded was. The other New York case involving payments to Stormy Daniels, a porn star, is also being appealed, and I believe once again the politics will not be considered and Mr. Trump will win that one as well. And I wonder how Ms. James and Mr. Bragg will explain how their highest profile cases were overturned by real judges when they try to run for office again. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. If you like it, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube.